We are going to dive into the first topic of the day. And really, generally, if you watch the show, you know that the social, we do not shy away from having difficult conversations about what people are talking about, especially online. And today, we are going to be talking about one of our own who has been the center of many conversations online, and that is Lainey Lui. And Lainey, you were trending online for well over 24 hours starting on Monday. So we wanted to first hand the mic over to you.
Thanks, Mel. I was trending because old posts on my website, laneygossip.com, from the 2000s were pulled up, and those posts were racist, they were misogynistic, they were homophobic, they were transphobic, they were ugly, they were shameful. I'm so sorry. The Lainey Gossip website has evolved in that time, and I have addressed and apologized over the years for these sins. However, accountability is not temporary, it's ongoing. So I'm here today to be accountable.
And we want to dive into the post just a little bit more, Lane, because you explained what they were. They were anti-Black, they were transphobic, they were homophobic. How do you explain them being there in the first place, writing them in the first place in 2006?
In 2006, in the 2000s, internet celebrity culture was toxic, and I was an early participant in that. And I was celebrated. I was quite popular. And so that popularity was self-gratifying, and I continued to feed into that. As I said, it changed over time, but in that moment, the only way I can explain it is by saying it was part of what I kept doing because I wanted to continue to be popular.
Lainey, why didn't you take those posts down?
Those posts are part of my ugly history, and you can't erase history. And so when I started to change, by the grace of people who taught me and my own research, I wanted to leave those posts up on the site to show that I was growing and learning, and I wasn't in any position to absolve myself. Did I think about deleting all of them? Sure. Did I start to? Yes. And then in that process, I realized that is self-absolution, and self-absolution, it has no place in this conversation. It's about accountability. So those old posts sit on the site to show people who I was, how ugly that was, and to also show that over time I grew, and I would address those old posts in the growing, point to them consistently and say, hey, this is what I was, look at me. And here I am, this is what I'm trying to do. That's why they still remain there, and that's why they will continue to remain there.
So you won't take them down?
I've had some suggestions over the last few days, and the suggestions are that they be on the site, but have a disclaimer pointing to the apology I have made recently, but also, reflecting the changes in the website. And I thought that that was a great, thoughtful suggestion. But no, they're not staying there because I believe in those things. They're staying there because I can't erase them. They have to be part of my shame. They have to sit there so that I can look at my shame as a reminder of not only who I was, but as a reminder of what I've done to grow.
Okay, let's go there then in the growth, because I think that is a huge part of this discussion, which is, have you thought in this, several days, what is now the path forward here, and what lessons have you learned personally since all of this erupted on Monday?
Since all of this erupted on Monday, the lessons have been the same lessons that I have been following and trying to apply over the last many years that the site has evolved and changed, which is looking at your shame, sitting in your shame, eating your food, as a friend of mine said, and not running away from it and holding yourself accountable to it. So I am not checking out. If there are people out there who want to cancel me and my website, I understand. But checking me out or me checking myself out means that I don't have to participate in accountability. And furthermore, I don't get to participate in further change. So in terms of growth and learning, of course, I continue to grow and learn from all of you. That's how this happened in the first place. I was not an evolved person back then, and I wasn't called out for it back then because there was no Twitter. And I decided myself then, hey, there are all these great people who are doing these great things, and you're not part of that. Don't you want to be part of that conversation instead? And so that's when I started to grow as a person. So I will continue to do that, and I will continue to not checking out, and I will continue to work on it.
Lainey, I want to go back to something you said. You weren't called out back then, and the growth that you've had. Because when you say you weren't called out back then, I can understand why, because I've been reading your blog nearly every day since 2008. So I remember some of these problematic posts, but I don't remember them being problematic at the time. And certainly I can't be the only one who didn't find them problematic. Otherwise, there would have been headlines back then. Canadian blogger writes racist, misogynistic, transphobic posts, and Lainey Gossip wouldn't exist today. And I just want to talk for a second about why I'm happy that it does exist today, because I remember there being a significant change in tone, what you were talking about around, maybe for me, I remembered around 2013, and you seemed to move away almost from smut towards social and political commentary, examined through the lens of celebrity culture and gossip. And I remember talking to other readers about how we were just kind of disappointed. We came to Lainey Gossip, for the smut. We didn't come to study. We came to be entertained, almost like we wanted the gladiatorial match. We didn't want to hear Cicero talking. And I imagine you lost viewers because of that. And I also imagine that you gained new ones, and you even brought your followers, your readers, like myself, up to speed. Like you were preaching allyship before I knew what that word meant. And I feel like a lot of your readers have gone on that journey with you, if you will. Does that make sense?
It does. I appreciate that. I think that is something I've been hearing a lot over the last few days, where people who have been reading my website for many, many years have said, yeah, I was with you from, in the 2000s, and I'm still with you. And, we're all doing this together. I've been so grateful for that, and I want to thank them for that. So obviously that includes you, Jess. At the same time, can better things be done? More things be done? Can more accountability be taken? Of course. So I'm trying to do that work.
It's funny because, Jess, I know you've been a longtime reader of Lainey Gossip, and I'm coming at it from the other side, which is I came to know Lainey as a coworker and was not a reader of her site, and have grown to love you, Lainey, because of the work that we do together on this show. And I want to talk about that evolution because I didn't know that Lainey back then. I know the Lainey that I've worked with over the last 7 seasons of The Social. But when I think about even 7 seasons of The Social and the evolution that you've had, we've all individually had, and the show that has evolved over 7 seasons, some of the things that we used to do in season 1, they died, as they should have, over the show getting wiser, smarter, and having these discussions, and often uncomfortable discussions. And it made me think of times in my life when I have really evolved in my thinking. And that has been things like big news stories like Monica Lewinsky. Like when I first learned of that story as a young person, everybody, I'm not trying to absolve myself here, but everybody had the same narrative, which is she's a home wrecker. She's, using her sexual prowess to, take down the president of the United States. I mean, the narratives back then were ugly. And when you think about what happened after Me Too and how Monica Lewinsky all of a sudden started to rise like the phoenix out of the ashes and did this like amazing TED talk to say, I was the first person to be shamed by the internet, and that you start to understand things like power dynamics and how could she have given consent as a young woman to the most powerful man in America? Like all of us, including me, started to look at that story and went, oh my gosh, did we do that to a young woman? Did I call that young woman all of those awful names all those years ago? So when we evolve, you've got to ask yourself, where have I gone wrong in the past? Where am I today? And how can I give myself grace to grow?
Yeah. Grace to grow. I think that's the biggest takeaway here. Listen, Lainey, we've been friends for only 5 years. I joined the Social season 3. I didn't read much of your site at all, but I know who you are. And I really do believe if someone is willing to listen, if they're willing to learn, if they're willing to change, if they're willing to put the work in, then they deserve the grace to continue down that path. I'll also say this. I defended Lainey on Twitter. There was a lot of action. A lot of people were saying a lot of things. And I said much of what we're talking about here, that she's never pretended to be perfect, that she has apologized, that she has grown. But here's what I'm going to say on a personal level. She has been an ally. And several other women of color in this industry know that, because Lainey has put pen to paper and she's pulled up and she's defended us when frankly others haven't. She's put her reputation, herself on the line when others haven't. People wonder all the time, how it is. And in their words, I can be graceful when people are threatening me and threatening my family and all sorts of things in my defense of Lainey. But I say to them that I don't believe that people are born with hate in their hearts. They just aren't. I think it's learned. And if it's learned, it can be unlearned. And so I will, try to present a different opinion, a different option to their hate in the hopes that even one person can learn, then that might be a small step in changing this world. But Lainey's doing that. She's doing it with her pen and beyond. So, have you learned, Lainey? Yeah, you've learned. Are you willing to continue to learn? Yeah, you are. And that's why grace is being afforded.
I thank you for that, Marcy. You're talking about what is learned and what can be unlearned. And it reminds me of a tweet by Ijeoma Ilowo. And the tweet is, the beauty of anti-racism is that you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be an anti-racist. Anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including in yourself. And it's the only way forward. You mentioned what is learned, Marcy, and I have talked many times on this show before this controversy erupted about systemic racism and how it's a virus that exists in many, many of us in the Western world. And so I think there are people out there who are good and who've never thought a racist thought, who've never committed a microaggression, and they are special. But as Black people and Indigenous people and other marginalized communities have been trying to tell us, there aren't that many of those really special people. And they've been asking the ones who are problematic to join the cause and to look internally. And so I'm not saying that I can be an example to everyone, but I am saying that I am the mistake. And I am also the mistake that has a platform to say, I screwed up and I can still be part of the cause. I can still be part of the way forward, hopefully. So I appreciate the opportunity. I will continue to do the work. I will also eat my food, sit in my shame, confront it, and let us all do this together.
Amen to that.